My name is Alina Merrick. I'm 37 years old, the kind of woman people describe as steady, responsible, polite, the one who makes sure the lights stay on even when no one notices who paid the bill. I've never been the center of attention, but I didn't expect my own sister to make me invisible at her wedding. The ballroom glittered that night in Savannah, chandeliers scattering light across polished floors. Guests in satin gowns and tailored suits raised their glasses as the band softened its tune. I sat in the 7th row, back far enough that I had to lean forward to see Mara, radiant in her lace gown. For a moment, I almost let myself feel proud. Then she lifted her champagne flute. Her eyes searched the room before settling on me. Her smile thinned into something sharp. "Rehearsed, to the family I chose," she said brightly, tilting her glass toward Evan's parents at the head table. Applause rippled around us, and then her voice cut through the clinking glasses. "And to those who don't belong here, you can leave now." Laughter caught in throats. Chairs creaked as people turned to look at me. Heat rushed up my neck, and my fingers slipped against the stem of my own glass. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. She had actually said it at her wedding, in front of 200 guests. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud against marble tile. My legs trembled as I rose, humiliation weighing heavier than the pearls around my neck. The room seemed to tilt, faces blurring in shock and curiosity. Then, before I could take a single step, Evan rose too. His chair toppled with a harsh crack, and the sudden silence in the hall was so complete it felt like everyone had stopped breathing. The silence in that ballroom didn't just belong to the present. It carried every year that had led me to this moment, every choice I had made that no one seemed to remember. I was 22 when our father died of a heart attack one June morning. Savannah's air was heavy that summer, thick with magnolia and grief. Mara was only 15. I remember her sitting on the porch steps, skinny arms wrapped around her knees, asking me what would happen to us now. Our mother gave us her answer soon enough. She remarried within a year, packed her things, and moved to Atlanta with her new husband. She said we'd understand someday. We never did. So it fell to me. I took a job waitressing in the mornings and folding clothes in a department store at night. I told Mara she could still try out for cheer, still go to the dance, still live like the girls with 2 parents waiting in the car. She believed me because I never let her see the bills piling on the counter or the way my shoes wore thin before I could afford another pair. When college came, she wanted a private university. I told her we'd find a way. I sold every piece of jewelry I had, even the wedding ring that had belonged to our mother. The last thing of hers I had kept. I watched the jeweler slip it into a velvet pouch as if he were taking something more than gold from me. But I smiled at Mara that night when the acceptance letter came, as if the empty place on my finger was nothing compared to the look on her face. I turned down my own chance at graduate school in Charleston. I told myself there would be time later, that her future mattered more than mine. Year after year, I measured my worth in her milestones, her cap and gown, her internships, the job she bragged about to friends. I thought if I gave enough, she would never doubt my love. And yet here I was, standing in a wedding hall where she had just asked me to leave. The invitation came weeks after I heard from neighbors that Mara was engaged. A thick cream envelope slipped through the mail slot, its calligraphy neat, impersonal, as if written for any other guest. My name, just mine, without even a note from her hand. No phone call, no visit, not even a text. I traced the embossed letters, my stomach tightening. I wasn't part of the planning. I hadn't seen the dress she chose, hadn't walked through the florist's samples, hadn't been asked for an opinion on the menu or the music. All those little rituals that draw families together, none of them had room for me. I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was the door was still open, however narrow. When I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, a young man with a clipboard stopped me before I reached the tables. "Name?" he asked politely. "Alina Merrick," I answered, adjusting the strap of my purse. He scanned the chart, then smiled quickly, apologetically. Row 7. Left side. Row 7. The words burned more than I expected. I could see the altar. Yes, but barely. Parents of the groom in the first row. Close friends, bridesmaids' families, second and third rows. By the time the usher guided me to my seat, I felt like an afterthought. Still. I clung to hope. I visited a small boutique downtown, bought a navy dress that hugged my shoulders and softened the tired lines at my waist. It cost nearly a month's salary, but when I stood before the mirror, I saw someone who could belong again, someone who might be noticed. I paired it with a pearl necklace, the only piece of jewelry I had left after years of sacrifice. For a gift. I chose a porcelain dinner set imported from Portugal, 12 pieces with delicate blue vines winding across the surface. I arranged a payment plan in 12 installments, slipping the receipt into my wallet. As the clerk wrapped each dish in tissue paper, I imagined Mara unboxing it with a smile, maybe even hugging me like she hadn't in years. It was foolish. Maybe. But hope is hard to kill when it's all you've been surviving on. The reception hall shimmered with candlelight, each table set with linen as white as fresh snow. A string quartet played softly, and waiters in crisp jackets circled with silver trays. I sat at the edge of it all, surrounded by strangers who spoke in low voices about careers, vacations, people they seemed sure I didn't know. The porcelain gift I had chosen with such care was nowhere in sight. It had been taken to a back room with the others, anonymous and hidden away. When the music slowed and the microphone was passed, a hush fell over the room. Mara stood at the center, her gown glittering under the chandeliers. She looked so confident, the perfect bride in the perfect setting. She raised her glass, and her smile carried the kind of warmth that cameras love. To the family I chose, she began, turning toward Evan's parents. Her voice rang clear, steady. You have welcomed me with open arms, shown me the kind of unconditional love I always dreamed of. You are the reason this day feels complete. Applause broke out, glasses lifted high. I forced my hands together, the sound flat in my own ears. My chest tightened, not from what she said, but from what she didn't. Not a single word about me, about the nights I stayed awake to soothe her tears, about the years I worked to make sure she never missed a step her friends could take for granted. Mara's gaze swept the room, then landed on me. The warmth drained from her eyes. And sometimes, she added lightly, her tone sweet but edged with steel, we must remember that not everyone in our lives is meant to stay. Some only bring negativity, hold us back from who we're meant to be. The applause faltered. A few heads turned my way, subtle but unmistakable. I sat rigid in my chair, pulse thudding in my ears, while the smile on Mara's face lingered. Practiced and cruel. Everyone knew exactly who she meant. The clinking of glasses had barely faded when the scrape of a chair broke through the room. Evan stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. The sharp crack against the marble floor silenced the last of the applause. Every head turned toward him. He didn't look at Mara at first. His eyes swept the guests, then found me. The air in the hall seemed to tighten, as if waiting for his permission to breathe again. Enough, he said quietly, his voice steadier than his shaking hands. He took the microphone from Mara, who blinked at him in disbelief. There are things you should all know before this evening goes any further. Mara's smile faltered. Evan, she whispered, her knuckles whitening around the stem of her glass. Not now. He ignored her. His gaze shifted back to me, then to the guests. When I met Mara, she told me stories about her past, about her family. She said her sister was bitter, controlling, an obstacle she had to overcome. I believed her. He paused, the words heavy. I loved her. I thought I owed her that trust. A murmur rippled through the tables. Mara's face flushed crimson. She reached for the microphone, but Evan stepped back, holding it out of reach. Then I started to notice things. He continued. The way she avoided inviting her sister to fittings, the way she pushed her into the back rows. I couldn't understand it. So I asked questions. I looked deeper. His voice broke for a moment, then steadied. And what I found was a woman who worked 2 jobs to raise her little sister after their father died. A woman who sold her jewelry, even her mother's wedding ring, so that girl could go to college. A woman who gave up her own future so Mara could have one. Gasps rose, sharp and disbelieving. My hands trembled in my lap, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. No one had spoken those truths aloud in years. Evan turned then, his expression hard. Mara lied to me. She built a story where sacrifice was twisted into cruelty. And I can't marry someone who humiliates the very person who gave her everything. The hall erupted shocked voices, scraping chairs, a waiter dropping a tray. Mara reached for him, panic in her eyes, but he slipped the ring from his finger and set it down on the table with a sound that cut deeper than any shout. "This wedding is over," he said. His words echoed through the ballroom, final and unshakable. And just like that, the world I thought I knew collapsed in a different direction. The sound of the ring hitting the table hadn't even faded before Mara's voice tore through the ballroom. "No, Evan, please don't do this!" Her scream cracked, raw and frantic. She stumbled toward him, clutching at his arm, but he shook her off. The silk of her gown tangled beneath her heels, and she crumpled to the floor. Then her eyes swung toward me. "Alina," she sobbed, her voice desperate. "Don't leave me. Please don't go. I need you." It was the first time in years I had heard her say she needed me, but it wasn't love. I heard it was panic, the fear of being abandoned in front of 200 witnesses. Her tears blurred mascara into rivers, her hair fallen loose from its pins, her voice breaking against the marble walls. I stood still for a moment, the weight of every shared memory pressing down. The nights I stayed up tutoring her for exams, the mornings I skipped meals so she could eat, the years I worked myself to exhaustion so she could feel chosen, cared for, and here she was, finally calling for me. But not out of love, out of ruin. My legs trembled as I reached for my purse. The napkin I had left on the table fluttered to the floor. I slid my chair back, the sound cutting through the chaos, and straightened my spine. Every eye followed me as I walked past the toppled champagne flutes, the spilled wine, the shards of a night shattered. I didn't run. I didn't bow my head. I walked out as if I had always belonged to myself, even if I had only just discovered it. The night air met me like a blessing cool, sharp, real. Outside, beneath the soft glow of the hotel's entrance lamps, a familiar figure stood waiting, Aunt Carmen, her shawl wrapped tight against the breeze, her eyes wide with worry. "Alina," she whispered, reaching for me. Her arms pulled me in, steady and warm. For a moment, I let myself lean into her. Then I drew in a breath, deep, clean, unshackled. For the first time in years, it felt like mine. Carmen's house smelled faintly of lavender and old cedar, the kind of scent that wrapped around me like a quilt. Her spare room was small but warm, with lace curtains and a narrow bed tucked beneath a framed photograph of our grandmother. That first night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest rising with a strange mixture of relief and terror. I had left Mara behind. Now I had to figure out who I was without her shadow. Carmen was the one who suggested therapy. "You've carried too much alone." "Alina," she said gently one morning over coffee, "it's time to set some of it down." The sessions were harder than I expected. Sitting across from a quiet-eyed woman named Dr. Lane. I heard my own voice admit things I had never allowed myself to say, how I had built my worth around Mara's needs, how I mistook sacrifice for love, how silence became my survival. One afternoon, after I described the years of selling heirlooms and working endless shifts, Dr. Lane tilted her head. "You didn't just allow Mara to use you, you taught her to," she said. The words landed heavy, but they rang true. I had erased my own boundaries so completely that Mara never even saw them. Back at Carmen's, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. Mara's texts still came pleas. Accusations, sudden bursts of guilt-laced apologies. The device vibrated in my hand like a tether, pulling me back to the role I had always played. That evening, I called the provider and asked to cancel the line. My voice didn't shake when the operator confirmed the disconnection. I felt a rush of silence flood in pure, unclaimed space. I placed the darkened phone in a drawer and shut it. The sound of it closing was louder than a slammed door. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for Mara's voice. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I caught my reflection in Carmen's hallway mirror, my shoulders straighter, my eyes clearer, and thought, this is me. Not someone's keeper, not someone's sacrifice. And that realization felt like the beginning of something entirely new. The message came on a rainy Tuesday. Evan's name glowed across the screen of my new phone, the one no longer tied to Mara. For a moment I hesitated, wondering what could possibly bind us after the chaos of that wedding night. But curiosity outweighed fear, and I answered, "Alina." His voice carried a gentleness I hadn't expected. "I don't want to intrude. I've been thinking about something, and I believe you might understand." We met on the porch of Carmen's house, the rain tapering off into a mist that softened the streetlights. Evan looked worn, his suit traded for jeans and a jacket, his expression older somehow. He didn't circle the topic. "That night showed me something," he said. "Not just about Mara, but about women like you. Women who give everything and get nothing back. I don't want to just walk away from that realization." He unfolded a sketch from his satchel, a plan for a community center. A place where women discarded by their families can come, to rebuild, to breathe again. The lines of the drawing were rough, but the idea pulsed with hope. My throat tightened as I studied it. "I can't build this alone," he added softly. "I don't need money from you. I need heart, perspective, someone who's lived it." The next Sunday, we rented a small church hall on the east side of town. The paint was peeling, the floorboards creaked, and the pews smelled of dust. Still, when a handful of women gathered in the dim light, sharing stories of being forgotten, I felt something stir. We started small, an evening circle, donated meals, secondhand books stacked on folding tables. Yet in that fragile beginning, there was a seed of something powerful. As I locked the hall that night, Evan turned to me. "Second porches matter," he said, "places where people can start over." I looked at the key in my hand and realized I was already standing on one. It was late afternoon when I saw Mara through the cafe window, sitting stiffly at a corner table with her hands clasped tight around a mug. For a moment I almost turned away, the years of hurt pressing against my ribs, but I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Her eyes flicked up, rimmed red, softer than I remembered. "Alina," she said, voice trembling, "thank you for coming." We sat across from each other, the air heavy with words unspoken. "Finally," she exhaled. "I was jealous of you," she confessed. "You gave everything, and instead of being grateful, I hated you for it. Your sacrifices reminded me of what I couldn't give back. It twisted into cruelty." Her honesty landed like a stone in still water, rippling through me with both pain and relief. I folded my hands, steadying myself. "If we're going to try again, Mara, it has to be different. There are conditions." She looked startled, then nodded slowly. First, I said, you respect me in public. No more silence. No more erasing. Second, you get help, therapy. You face why you hurt the people who loved you most. Third, I hesitated. Then let the truth out. You will not depend on me for money. Not anymore. Mara's lips parted, as if she wanted to argue, but the fight drained from her shoulders. Public respect. Therapy. No money, she repeated, each word slower than the last. I can try. For the first time. I didn't rush to soothe her, didn't shrink myself to make her comfortable. I just nodded, letting the silence stand. Outside, the sun slipped low, gilding the cafe windows in amber. Across from me, Mara didn't look like the sister I had carried all my life. She looked like someone learning to stand for herself. 2 years passed, and the rented hall had long since grown into something larger. Second Porch now filled an old red brick building on the east side of Savannah, its rooms bright with sunlight and the sound of voices no longer afraid to be heard. Workshops buzzed with energy women learning skills, trading stories, reminding one another that broken beginnings didn't mean broken endings. I moved through those halls with a steadiness I once thought impossible, no longer the shadow behind my sister, no longer the sacrifice that defined me. I was simply Alina, a woman who built something with her own hands, and for the first time, felt seen without needing anyone's permission. Mara came quietly at first, slipping into the back of the community cafe to help wash dishes or serve coffee. She kept her head low, her voice softer than it had ever been. Over time, she began to greet women by name, listening more than speaking, learning humility cup by cup. I didn't praise her, and I didn't scold. I let her earn her own place. One afternoon, after a meeting with donors, I walked into the cafe and found Mara refilling cups at a table of women laughing freely. She looked up at me not for approval, not for rescue, but with a simple nod of acknowledgement. That was enough. Later that evening, I carried out a porcelain tea set, the same one I had once bought for her wedding. Its delicate edges gleamed under the cafe lights, but its meaning had shifted. No longer a gift for a place that shut me out. It belonged here among women who welcomed me in. I poured tea, steady-handed, and their smiles reflected back at me. This time, mine joined them unforced, unbroken, fully my own. Would you like me to also draft an epilogue reflection 200 words that ties the title and the hook question into a final, resonant close?